Hey guys, today we're back with my 2022 lifted Subaru BRZ, and we finally have some proper winter driving conditions to test out these Falken Winterpeak F-Ice 1 tires. So this is kind of a follow-up video to my video the other night when we had some pretty wet snow and slightly slushy conditions out on the roads. It was pretty tricky to get through. This car on this tire does much better today. It is 5 degrees Fahrenheit out. We have a fresh layer of powder and some ice underneath. So we've got a little bit of everything that we can test out today. First of all, I love the look of these tires. They look like gravel rally tires. And driving on them so far this year, they've performed really quite well in the dry and the wet. For a winter tire, this might have some of the best wet performance I've ever tested next to something like the Continental Viking Contact 7, or even just kind of some of the harder winter tire compounds out there. First impressions today seems to do quite well in this powder, ice, and snow. So love the look of it. It's a pretty inexpensive tire, $88 for this size, 205/60 R16s. These are slightly larger and slightly narrower than OEM sizing. So we gained some ground clearance, and of course my BRZ has a 1.5 inch lift on it for a total of about 7 inches of ground clearance. So it actually gets through the snow pretty well, about the same ground clearance as you'd see in a small crossover. Modifications, 4.3 limited slip differential. I just added this duckbill spoiler on the back. That looks pretty good. We have an MRT street touring axle back exhaust, a tow hitch, and an FT86 Speedfactory catted unequal length header. Stock tune, stock brakes, and of course we can't forget the Braid Fullrace A wheels, 16x7, 35mm offset, 5x100, custom made for this car. Very strong, pretty lightweight wheel, used in rally, Dakar, pretty popular in a lot of safari builds these days. Here's a better look at that tire compound. You can see these tires are studdable, though we're not allowed to run studs here in Michigan. This car has also been taken to Krown rust control and treated for anti-corrosion. So it's been sprayed, shouldn't rust anytime soon. I usually do yearly or every other year applications on my cars, and that seems to keep them 100% rust-free, which is great. All right, let's hop inside. It's freezing. We'll go for a drive in the Rally BRZ and see what it can do in some ice and snow. So we'll start. I'm actually going to turn traction control off just because that's more fun, that's more entertaining. It's very predictable out here, very easy to drive and to control. Basically, all you want out of a winter tire is for you to feel like there's really no snow or ice underneath you. And that's kind of what I'm gathering from this F-Ice 1. Braking performance is excellent. Plenty of acceleration, traction on throttle here. Tire's predictable. A little bit of ice there. Not as squishy and unpredictable as some other compounds that I've tested. This definitely handles better in the dry than the X-Ice from Michelin that I've been testing on this car last year and that we have on the S2000 this year. X-Ice snow might do a little bit better in the snow and the ice, but honestly, once you have a good winter tire on your car, it handles so much better than an all-season or an all-terrain that it all makes winter driving pretty easy. budget studdable option that looks cool, I think this is a great tire. I like it a lot for this car. It makes a little bit more sense for a sports car because it gives you extra grip in conditions that may prevail most of the year, dry and wet. Yeah, I like this a lot. This is fun. Alright, let's turn traction back on and start driving like a normal person. Higher speeds. Little brake test here. This is pretty icy. Braking performance is just awesome here. Let's merge over into this less maintained lane. Seems to evacuate snow pretty well too. I'm not struggling over these transitions because the BRZ is so light. Sometimes it can get tossed around a little bit in deeper stuff. In really deep snow, I like to put a couple sandbags in the trunk. That seems to help quite a bit. Yeah, this is making pretty easy work of the conditions today. It's tough to just do one test on a winter tire because there are so many different types of snow, temperatures, levels of moisture that you kind of have to cover a tire in a variety of conditions to really feel it out and see what it can do. We're going to go into track mode because that gives us a little bit more slip while still reining us in slightly. It will limit wheel spin and slip angle around a corner. Something so satisfying about driving around in the snow in a sports car and just having better traction than anyone else. Yeah, this is awesome. Easy stop there. Didn't even have to get into ABS. Just lovely. Sheer ice right there. More ice right here too. This feels great. I mean, it feels very similar to the Blizzaks that I've had on this car. The X-Ice snow. I mean, a winter tire is a winter tire. At the end of the day, it comes down to price, availability, sizing. And I think, honestly, one of the most important factors in a winter tire for my driving here in Michigan is dry and wet performance, just because that's what we see most of the year. We rarely see days like this, honestly. It's a few weekends a year, it's a few days a year where conditions are this bad. most of the time it's just dry or wet. And that's really where these tires shine. And they do great in the snow also. So no complaints there. I did do a brief test earlier this season on the all-terrain tires that I was running, the Falken Winterpeak AT Trails. And though they got me through the snow pretty respectably, it's not something that I would want to drive on it on a regular basis. It's not something I would want to daily drive, for example. It didn't give me the confidence that I have on this tire. It just goes to show, yes, you can run an all-season. Probably the best option for that would be the Cross Climate 2s from Michelin. But even on something like this, I would be a little bit hesitant to do that. And I would just want a dedicated winter tire. One, because it's so predictable and so much fun to drive on in the snow. And two, it's just a safer option in the cold weather months, and especially if you live somewhere where there are hills, mountains. You can run a studdable tire where you live. That's a pretty solid option if you live where there's a lot of ice and mountains. Colorado, for example. I can't really comment on that with this tire just because we're not allowed to run studs here in Michigan, but look at that, a little bit of a hill there, getting us out onto this intersection pretty easily. Little jump here. DTE truck doing a little drift. Nice. That is the beauty with rear-wheel drive, is you can get the car rotated so well, so easily. You have much more control over the car's cornering ability than you do in something that's front-wheel drive that'll just understeer everywhere. I did spend a little bit of time driving the Civic Type R in the snow earlier this season, and it just wasn't any fun at all. It doesn't have a handbrake, so you can't get it rotated around tight corners. The stability control system in that car doesn't really torque vector or brake the inside wheels to get you rotated around corners in the snow like my old GTI did, for example. You're kind of just on your own. And again, I'm running it all season on that car, so it's just not very safe, not very fun, not very enjoyable. So on days like this, I've pretty much just parked the Type R and I'm enjoying this thing. And boy, is it a blast. Honestly, this is my favorite time of year to drive the BRZ. The only time when this gets sketchy is in deep snow. The rest of the year, the rest of the time, as long as your roads are pretty well maintained or you're not going out right during a heavy snowstorm, these cars are just an absolute joy to drive. This car is a BRZ Premium, which means it's the base model, so I don't get heated seats. That said though, never been freezing in these cloth seats. They seem to warm up to your body temperature pretty quickly. The car itself warms up incredibly fast. It's one of the fastest cars to put out heat that I've ever owned. Part of that is because of that oil water sandwich plate oil cooler in this car. It just kind of gets everything up to temperature. The oil matches the coolant temperature quickly as the vehicle warms up, and that's really nice for the winter season. We've got traction control on right now. We're going to start off in second. As long as you're very light with the throttle, with traction on, this is a very easy car to control. when it does get sideways, the steering almost kind of auto steers. It does its own job. There's a little bit less steering feedback in this new generation of BRZ, and that does make it slightly more difficult to judge your levels of grip at the front end, but for the most part, this is a pretty easy winter driving experience for a rear-wheel drive lightweight sports car. If you're not as experienced in a car like this in the snow, I would start off traction on, don't turn anything off. Keep your throttle inputs very light, very delicate. And it's almost like there isn't snow underneath you. Get a good set of winter tires. That's another reason why I wanted to test out these F-Ice ones, is because there really aren't any reviews out on these tires. And they perform great. They feel just like any other quality winter tire, just as good as some double the price. So I think as kind of an under-the-radar option, they do very, very well. And there's some things I like about them more than some of the competitors that you just don't hear about these tires as much. We'll see how they wear. So far, with some pretty hard driving in the dry and wet, they haven't really shown much tread degradation. I've been pushing this car pretty hard, and they seem to be holding up great to pretty adverse driving. Even in some higher temperatures. We've seen some 45, 50 degree days out here in Michigan. Thought that maybe this tire wouldn't do as well in the snow because it does seem like a slightly harder compound. I don't think that's the case. It's doing just fine. Even on the ice, right here, sheer ice, almost. Maybe a little bit of powder in there. It's doing great. There's some ice. That's still pretty good. Good braking performance. Alright guys, well, that is going to be a wrap on this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you had fun. Learned some things. We're entertained. We'll see you guys in the next one. Drive safe out there. And go enjoy your BRZ a little bit on some winter tires. grass here. I'm gonna ride up close to the curb and over, and that's why I like my ground clearance.